Good afternoon, students. Welcome to our exam-based session for learner support in mathematics. As we know, this is the subject that really guides us on how to do the mathematics in our classes. It have different topics, how to tackle different topics and how to deal with difficulties in our classes and so on. So I want you to pay attention and learn and apply them as you go on into the profession. I wish you to be good listeners and good students as well. Let's begin. The first unit under this topic is key issues underpinning learning support. We are not going to do everything, but we are just looking at the main points that they are quite part of your examination. So this unit aims at making you aware of learner support, the necessary thing that you need to do to address the challenges posed by a range of abilities, disabilities, and socio-economic circumstances in the regular classrooms. We have different types of learners in our classes. So what is that you can do in our classes to support them? Now, the first thing that you are going to look at is how can knowledge be processed? You can teach and teach and teach, but how do these learners process the knowledge that you are giving them? Knowledge about and control over thinking and learning activities is known as metacognition. And that metacognition involves helping learners to know what to do in a given situation, and also helping your learners to know how and when to do the what. So metacognition now, that is the control of overthinking and learning activities. What is that knowing what to do involve, and what does knowing what to do include? So then these are the differences now, and then you should know how to differentiate between these two types of metacognitive. Knowing what to do involves identifying the main area. On the other side, it means checking to see if the learners understand. So how do we switch between when you are teaching your learners? How can you check what to do for you to find out that learners know what to do and when to apply what they know? Okay, so then I want you to really look at this part more seriously. Then what if content and cognitive process? These are the most significant ways of thinking mathematically that are characteristic of learning mathematics. For us to know mathematics, you need to know the content, and you have to use that cognitive, you have to use the thinking skills. This cognitive process include recognizing and applying equivalences, recognizing and applying transformation, making connections, using symbols, and moving between symbolic representation as well. So then when it comes to content and cognitive process, you must know, and you should also be able to explain these processes. Using and applying mathematics now. Emphasizing on the importance of children using mathematics is the main thing when it comes to using and applying mathematics. For example, we have these 5 key issues using and applying mathematics: problem solving, representing, inquiry, reasoning, and communicating. What does each issue represent? What does each key point represent? What does problem solving means? What does representing mean? Reasoning, and so on. And you should know how to explain this using and applying mathematics issues. Now, the second unit, under this unit, we are going to look at methods and techniques which support special needs. What are the methods and techniques that we can use to support awareness? You should be able to recognize objects, people, events. You are aware of your environment. You are aware of the objects. You are aware that you're holding a pen, for example. You are aware that we have people in the class, and so on. Exploration, inquiry, and utilization. These are the methods that you can use. You should go and read in your study book to see how does this apply in our classrooms. How can we apply them? And then how can a teacher use a variety of methods to support different learning abilities? we have different learners in our classes. It should not just be teacher-centered group work every time, or writing the summary question next time. You have to switch between different methods. Why should the teacher do that? And mathematics can be taught in many ways. The teacher-centered approach, where the teacher describes how to solve problems using a few examples on the board and then setting an exercise for the people to do, is boring. That is what most of us do. But you can see that this thing of doing the same thing every day, today we are going to learn about this. This is an example. Now try this. It should not be every day like that. Repeating this approach lesson by lesson is worse and discouraging the learners. The learners are not the same, and they can therefore not be taught the same way. So we have to be creative as teachers so we can switch between different methods. What are the reasons now? Why should we use different approaches, teaching methods? Teachers have an obligation to make the mathematics they taught interesting and understandable. You must show your creativity. Your learners should see that, we are really having a very good mathematics teacher. The teacher that use different methods. There should be different learners have different abilities, background, and interest. There are those learners who, when they come to the class, they already went through. So when it's just the same thing to them every day, it becomes boring to them. For each learners, they have to experience success. They have to be given different tasks so that they can do better. Different stage in learning process require different strategies. The first term, the way you teach the kids first in your first term is not the same way they will be in the last term. You can see that there is growth. So then you have to also switch the approach that you are using to teach them. What are these examples of different methods? We have this percent direct hierarchy that has suggesting a think board is an illustration of different ways to introduce and develop mathematics in your class. So when you go out there, you have this book. You can see, you can open up your mind. It's not just teachers this example today and tomorrow. You have to switch. You can use stories, you can use numbers, you can use symbols, you can use words, you can use diagram. You can bring real things in the classes. Like the senior primary mathematics is so contextualized. There are things that you can bring out from home. Tell learners to bring things from home so that you can integrate them in your classes, so that you can also see how mathematics is playing a role in our lives. What are the causes of difficulties in learning mathematics? I hope we know that most of the learners really complain about mathematics. What are the difficulties? One is the problem solving. Sometimes it's very difficult to solve the problem when coming up with a mathematical language from just an English thing. It's quite difficult. The language of mathematics has its own words, its own thing. If you're talking about the root, learners they are just used to a root of a plant. Coming to us, the mathematics lesson, this is the square root, this is what is that again? This is the x, this is x's. But it's something that is really quite different from the meaning of the mathematics that they know from home. That is can bring some difficulties. The developmental nature of mathematics. Mathematics builds on the moment there's a gap there in between, like imagine you are just teaching learners from a learner from grade 3 coming straight to grade 7, for example. What do you expect that learner to, how do you expect, because there's a very big gap that a learner was supposed to do, of which she or he did not do, that you can come and use it in grade 7. Now if you create that gap also in your classes, like you did not teach those learners well enough the way they must be, then it's just problems that you are inviting in future. Then you are giving problems to your colleagues also in secondary education, because there you did not create a solid foundation that learners can comfortably build on their mathematics as they move on. So then be careful and make sure that you are doing the right thing, so that we cannot create that gap in our learners. How do our learners solve problems? As I said, problems, one of the problems with difficulties, problem solving. We have 4 main steps. Help the learners to understand the problem, translate it into a mathematic language, calculate it correct, and they make sure that they use the correct form. If the question say how many cars, then the answer should have 20 cars. What is that they were calculating, and so on. We have keywords in problem solving that you should also focus on. More, less, or together. What does that question mean? More, less, or together. And how can you teach your learners to solve their problems? Ask them to read the problem, ask them to explain what they mean, ask them to how do they understand it, and then ask them to see if they can choose the correct operation to do the sum. When it comes to problem solving, I want you to read the whole part in your study guide so that you can have a deep understanding of what they really mean here. And then how can we meet learners' special needs? Learners use cooperative learning groups where the learners work together and they can help each other. Use computer activities, provides positive experiences, provide easily accessible tablets to accommodate learners with physical challenges, tables, individualized and relate instructions. We have a lot of things as teachers that you can make use of to meet learners with special needs. And these are not the only points. Your study guides have quite a number of points that you can read and go through to see how you can help learners with special needs. Then the third unit is about evaluation of general learning and support in mathematics. This is when we now have to do with the first part that you are going to look at is planning. Planning is the most and the crucial part when it comes to teaching. What is that? The factors that you must consider when you are planning a lesson. You have to consider the learner's previous knowledge. You know you have a syllabus, and it's always advisable to, if you are a grade 4 teacher, your syllabus, I think you have grade 3 and grade 2 and grade 1 content. You must familiarize yourself with what the learner have learned in previous grades. If you are a higher school teacher, you must have your senior primary syllabus. You must have the primary syllabus, because you should, so that you know that at least this is the previous knowledge learners have already, not just to feed them and treat them as if they know nothing. Like they said, empty vessels. You should not do that. But you can do that if you know you are not aware. But as a teacher, you must know what your learners have learned previously. For example, how to add and subtract fractions. The pupils need to know the parts of the fraction. If you imagine you are teaching the learners how to add and subtract fractions, they must know the different parts of the fraction. This is the numerator, this is the denominator. They must know how to find the lowest common multiple. They must know how to write fractions with as equivalent, they must know what equivalent fractions are. You must know how to add and subtract. You must know how to change between mixed fractions and decimal fractions, improper fractions, for example. Those are the things that learners must be aware, or that you must be aware of as a teacher. You must also consider the materials. What type of materials should you bring to the classroom? You must know the class ability and experience, and you must know the difficulties learning and teaching the topics. As a teacher, you must know the topic very well. Consult as many resources as possible, and also discuss the topic with a younger colleague to gather enough information and clarify on it. So then you can do the teamwork here as colleagues, teaching the same subject. You can ask your senior or your junior colleagues to help you. How can I well teach this subject, for example? And how should we plan a mathematics lesson? These are the components that you have to consider when you are planning a lesson. The heading, the objectives, difficulties, materials, the introduction, the development, the conclusion, the evaluation, and the learner's evaluation, and also evaluation of the lesson. Especially the evaluation of the lesson, that is where you do your reflection. What did what went good and what went wrong in your lesson. How can we improve on that? Do you need to repeat the question, the lesson or not? Do you need to give more exercises or not? These are the components that you really need to know, and I want you to make sure that you know what each component represent. If what is that you have to put under difficulties that people may have, what type of information that you must put under the introduction, and so on. The fourth unit is about fundamental concepts and skills. Now here we are going to look at the relationship between numbers 1 through 10. We have the fundamental outlines for the relationship that children should develop with numbers. These are the relationships that you must know. The pattern set, 1 and 2 more, 1 and 2 less, anchors and benchmarks of 5 and 10, part whole and relationships. When it comes to numbers between 1 and 10, learners should have a relationship. How are these learners how are these numbers related? Like the pattern set, learners should be able to recognize the set without counting. Like the set in dominoes, for example, they should know that this is 5, this is 6, just the way the numbers are arranged, so that without counting them. 1 and 2 more. You can say that, for example, here they said 8. They should know that 8 is 1 more less than 7. 8 is 2 less than 10. 8 is 1 more than 7. 8 is 7. 8 is 1 more than 7. Or 1 is more than 7, and so on. 8 is 1 more than 7, and so on. Those are the things that they should be able to know when it comes to relationship between numbers from 1 up to 10. What factors learners must understand about multiplication? Multiplication is a repeated addition. It means equal groups. It means times as much. It means rate. Those are all facts that they must know when it comes to when it comes to multiplication. Fractions. How fractions can be represented? It can be a part whole, a measurement, a division. So then when it comes to fraction learners, fraction is quite something that I have experienced that learners have problems with, because they treat fraction as something, but the fraction is just a number that is being divided to give smaller things. Fraction can be smaller than 1, it can be bigger than 1, can be bigger than 2, and so on. You have a whole and another small part that is not a whole, that is called a fraction. Can be a part whole. Like a body has many parts, you can relate it to that. A car has many parts. A house has parts. A chair has parts. So then it can mean a group of people as well. So then fractions is a part whole. What is a fraction as a measurement? Involves identifying the length and use them as a measurement to determine the length of an object. Fraction is a division. They pass out cookies for a snack, for example. They deal with cards for game of pictures, for example. How the things are being divided. And division of whole things into parts. Like division of a whole thing into parts, fraction can be like that as well. How fraction can be represented as an operator, as a ratio, as models of fractions. So then you have to be familiarize yourself with this type of how fraction can be represented and be able to explain them to your learners. And what are the materials and activities that a teacher can use to teach primary part-whole relationship as a bridge to understand fractions? Imagine you are teaching fractions. What materials can you bring in the classroom to see, for the learners to see? You can bring a hot dog and cut into 5 pieces, and then you can see what if 2 friends received how many parts out of these pieces, and so on. You can use the word parts, whole, divide, and half. For example, today everybody get half an apple and half a sandwich. Then so that they will know what you mean by a half. Too bad part of this game is missing. What material? You can bring games and see what type of, maybe the pieces, maybe the puzzles, the pieces are not enough. So So you can see this part of the puzzle is not enough. One is missing. Take this basket of crackers and divide them in so that everybody get the same amount. For example, now we want equal shares. No, we won't cut the carrot, everybody gets a whole carrot. Now the concept of a whole, we have only one apple, let us divide it. How can we divide that whole thing in different parts so that everybody can have a share? And then now, for if there are 4 learners, how are they going to cut that apple so that every child have an equal share? Unit 5 is about applying concept and skills. For example, time. Learners need to know that the length of time of an event can be measured using the units of time. Seconds, minutes, hours, days, and weeks, they are all units of time. Time sequence and time duration, you must know the difference between these two. Kinds of time. Children relates time to 3 things: personal experience when I was baby, for example, social activities, and cultural time. They must also know this language of time. I'm telling you, when you create that confusing or misunderstanding when it comes to time in primary education, secondary education, we are facing problems when it comes to time, because there is a gap. As I said, difficulties there will be experienced if the gap is not fixed earlier, so that they will know when they go there, they know what they are talking about. Unit 6 is about concept and operation for the primary grades. That is correcting and organizing data that you are going to look at now. Statistics, to be specific. This is when you collect data, displaying data in tables and diagrams and graphs, and also describe them as well and analyze the information. So I want you to be able to draw graphs and then be able to answer questions from the graphs, from the tables, and interpret them. For example, your notes, go through your study guides so that you can see, read through, especially on the type of the data presentation. Then Unit 7 is about issues of mathematics environment. This is when we talk about the manipulative now, the materials that you can bring from the environment to the class. Manipulative mathematics require materials for children to explore. Hands-on mathematics require that materials be handled, sorted, distributed, and replaced. I want you to be creative teachers. If a topic requires you to bring something to the class, please do not teach those learners in an abstract way. Have those manipulatives. Have learners to work, see how this thing work. Now we have, you can check on internet, then you can see which materials you can bring in your classes for that matter. Constructing materials that can be useful in mathematics classes. For example, there are 2 types of materials that you can purchase, and those you can just get from the environment. You can purchase, you can get some money from your class. Like for myself, I don't know how much I spent when it comes to buying posters, buying a lot of materials in the classes. If you visit my class one day, you'll be surprised. But something that I just bought, and then in some cases I will just bring the materials, then learners will build different shapes, cubes, cuboids, and those things. If they are talking about the nets, then we know what you are talking about, especially the shapes. We have so many things that are made up of shapes that you can work on in different topics in mathematics. What are the mathematical concepts that can be developed outside the classes or on the playground? Different concept. What is that you are teaching learners to have? Are you teaching them to count? If you are teaching them to count, if they go outside there, what is that you can do so that they can count? Setting the tables, calculating a receipt, exchanging money, estimation, comparing, all these length, sequences. Those are the different concepts that learners can learn outside. Just not inside, but outside. One of the nice projects that you can give to your learners is to say, for this week, especially after you have completed your syllabus, then you can now reflect that we have done mathematics from chapter 1 up to chapter 10. Now I want you for this week, you have to record every part that you have done that involve mathematics, so that they can know what mathematics is, how they are using mathematics in their daily lives. Because most of them, we do mathematics every time, but learners, they don't know that I'm doing mathematics now. So then give them that project, record every part. I cut an apple, you have to record it. I walked a distance of 2 kilometers to my friend's house, and so on. I spent 2 hours reading the book. That is all mathematics. So then you have to try to give them that project to see what concept they can remember, that is, they can use, they can integrate, that you can see that they are using in their daily lives, related to mathematics. The next unit is about issues of assessment in mathematics now. Assessment is the process of gathering evidence about a learner's knowledge of and ability to use and disposition towards the mathematics, and of making inferences from that evidence for a variety of purposes. We have two purposes of assessment: enhance students' learning and making instructional decision. Learners are regularly assessed through classwork, homework, tests, schools, and public examination. This assessment can be divided into categories: summative and formative assessment. Go through your units so that you can read what the assessments are all about. Why is necessary? What type of assessment can we take? If we are talking about formative and summative, what is the difference between the two assessments? Why is it needed? What information can we get? And how can that information talk to us as teachers? What can we say? What can we do about the learners' results? Are we telling that the learners doesn't know mathematics, or maybe the weakness is on our side? So that is the issue of assessment. How homework can be an effective learning support. Every day, a learner must have mathematics homework. That is the only way they can practice and learn better. Now, how can we make this practice an effective learning support? Sometimes learners just give the parents, I have this homework, I don't understand it, do for me. But you have to make it an effective, they have to learn. No, somebody should not do it for them, but at least we must help them learn better as well. Teachers must set and mark homework, because regular marking and recording of marks ensure that learners that teachers is interested in what they are doing. I know my dear primary learners, they know they like those ticks. No one will like a cross. So if you regularly mark their homeworks, they know you have to, I want ticks. So then they have to work hard and then to get that homework done. Do not make homework too difficult or too easy. Set homework with a range of difficulties, with challenging and doable exercises. Give variety of activities. Move on. Give an extra question that maybe you did not even do it in your class. There are gifted learners that they can apply more, much more. And you should not limit them with the exercises or homework that you are giving them. Do not make homework too long. You know, learners are not learning mathematics alone. We have other subjects. 2-3 questions is enough for the homework. Homework should not be graded based on correctness. Use wrong answers as an opportunity to assist learners to promote growth. Observe that the homework is complete always. You can also provide guiding questions for parents or get hints that can help them with their children and understand your problem. You can give an example. For example, if you want learners to go further with what maybe you want to, you can give a homework for the next or topic for the next day. You can now give an exercise just to guide, an example just to guide them on how this problem can be tackled. Why learners' research or performance should be interpreted. Once you assess your learners, why should you interpret them? Identify variety of achievement levels with the classroom's level. You can see whether this class understand, this learner don't understand, so that that is the reason why you have to interpret those results you get from assessment. Differentiate instruction to meet the needs of the learners. Then you can assess or evaluate, was my instruction maybe wrong or what? Why are the learners failing? What is that I'm doing wrong? evaluate learners' choice, and peer tutoring. So if depending on which method you use to teach your learners, you can see that my learners like this topic because this method, they prefer songs, or they prefer stories, they prefer more manipulatives, so I have to bring more manipulative in the class because I can see that they have done better in the test compared to only when I was teaching them in the class just like that without any resource at all. Employ flexible groups, devise means of modifying instruments and instruction, and so on. So you can see to switch between teaching methods. That is why. To conclude this presentation, this subject is a mirror of what needs to be done in math class to help our learners. I wish you to apply what you are learning in this module when you become professional teachers out there. It's a very nice book. Please apply what you are learning. Make sure that you study all the units so that you will be well prepared for a real classroom situation. I wish you all the best in your study. Stay safe and do not hesitate to contact me for questions you might be having. My contact number 081-2009-524. You can WhatsApp me your question and I'll come back to you as long as you provide that I'm an IOL student, please. And then my email is loidemwetu@gmail.com. Thank you.